I do quite a few master classes around the world, and since we only have about 40 minutes or something, it's hard to know where to start. But one thing that I recommend to all of you is is try to find your own voice on your instrument, whether it's the guitar or if you play another instrument. Try to find your style, because there are so many musicians out there in the world today, and because of the internet, because of Wi-Fi and YouTube and everything that's in social media, the world is much smaller. There's great musicians in every country. I know there's great musicians here in Russia and in the U.S. and Western Europe and Asia and South America, all over the planet now. There's, and especially when it comes to contemporary music, jazz or progressive kinds of rock and R&B and classical, of course. There's just incredible musicians. There's also not as much work as there used to be because of the computer and because of computerized music. So playing your instrument and finding a space to work and earn a living and make money being a professional musician is more challenging than ever. And so I think it's really important that you are not a copy of another musician. So everyone's got their favorite musicians, that you follow and you get inspired. But for instance, talking about an old famous rock player like Jimi Hendrix, there's only one Jimi Hendrix, right? So you don't need to be a carbon copy of Jimi Hendrix or Jeff Beck or Wes Montgomery or Kenny Burrell or any of even the young guys that are out there today that are making a name for themselves. It's better if you have influences from many players and many styles. It's kind of like cooking in the kitchen. You use this spice, you use this spice, and eventually you find your way, And so there's a couple ways you can help get your style. So first of all, everyone does have their style, because when you call your friend up on the phone, you don't have to say your name. They recognize your voice, right? So everyone's got an individual voice, so that you have to get this voice into your instrument. So so everyone does have their style. And one of the ways that I recommend sort of finding your style is by writing songs. So very, very important to write your own music. So it doesn't matter if you're a drummer, bass player, piano player, guitar player, saxophone, horn player, very important to write your own music. And sometimes what happens if you start writing and you get frustrated, and let's say you spend 2 weeks trying to just write songs, okay? That's all you do. Just spend 2 weeks writing a song. The first 10 days you're not gonna be happy, You're gonna write these songs and you're gonna say, at least this happens to me. It's like, oh, that's horrible. That's a copy of something I already wrote. Oh, that sounds like somebody else, And so you're writing and writing, but it's like a muscle, It's like a technique on the guitar. Writing music is also an exercise. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And so professional songwriters, they write every day, all day long. So it's important to write these songs. So let's say you're writing for 2 weeks. The first 10 days, you're not happy with anything. All of a sudden, a song appears. And maybe it took 30 minutes to write that song. Maybe it took 3 days to write that song. That's okay. And all of a sudden you go, wow, I kind of like that. And you're happy with the song. And so it's sitting there. It's over here. You've either recorded it on your phone or on your computer, or you've written it down, but it exists, separate from, now it's outside of you. It's right there. And you can go, okay, that's kind of me. I like that, and you have to acknowledge that you do like it. And so, and then sometimes that makes it easier to go to the next song, and then all of a sudden things that you like about music are appearing. Because in today's world, there's so many influences. There's so many players that we get inspired by. There's so many different kinds of music. There's world music, there's metal, there's progressive rock, there's jazz, there's traditional jazz, there's fusion, there's R&B, there's pop, there's indigenous music from your country, from another country. You might love Brazilian music. It's because, and everything is at the touch of, on your phone, on the computer. You can just access any music immediately. So that's great, but it also can be confusing. So when you're writing those songs, it really can help you get your style. So I really recommend studying composition too, studying classical composition. It's really important. The classical composers, of course, you have some of the greatest ones out of Russia, and so the classical composers, they knew all the good tricks. So just studying basic analysis of classical composition, even if you don't like classical music, you don't have anything to do with classical music, but check out, if you can, get with somebody and study the analysis of classical compositions, because you get that under your belt a little bit, it really helps in composing pop music, rock, R&B, whatever. It's amazing how the history of music is all connected, So to me, every aspect, this is something to really remember, every aspect of music, I don't care if you're playing a rhythm guitar in a band, you're producing a band in the studio, you're playing Brazilian music and trying to play more legitimate, kinds of music, trying to play straight-ahead jazz, trying to play Brazilian music, trying to write songs, what it really, for me, what everything is improvisation. Everything is creative in music, all the way down to the mixing of your album, to the mastering, to the getting it on a CD, which nobody does anymore, and all the way from whether you're trying to be really legitimately traditional and play a very legitimate Brazilian style, or you're trying to play jazz, or you're trying to play rock or metal, you're writing a song, whatever you're doing, getting sounds out of your pedals, setting them up in a certain way so they sound a certain way, getting your amp to sound a certain way. It's for me, there's a certain aspect that it's always about improvisation, which means, for me, always being a jazz musician, even when it has nothing to do with jazz, So even if I'm in like today we have an African piece we're doing, and I'm rocking out at the end, but I'm still coming from a jazz point of view. And then there's a Brazilian piece that we're doing, a Gilberto Gil song with Luciana Sosa earlier, and I'm trying to, get inside the samba and be as Brazilian as I can. But it's all a creative aspect. Everything you do in music is creative. If you're a classical player and you're interpreting the notes on a paper and learning to play a Segovia classical guitar piece that millions of people have played before you, you're still interpreting it, you're still playing jazz, It's for me, it's all jazz. And it doesn't matter if you're playing metal or classical or writing a song or producing a record, it's all creative. So, I have been playing the guitar a long, long time. I'm 66, and I've been playing since I was 8 years old, so way over 50 years. And it has been the love of my life, and it's something that I fell in love with at a very, very young age, and it has continued. It is there was definitely times where it was frustrating, and the learning curve for learning the guitar, I would fight with it and get frustrated and almost cry trying to get to the next step, And then, but the direct question being, did I ever get tired or burned out and just had to keep doing it because that's what I did in life? I can say, fortunately, that I've had this love affair with music and the guitar, and it's never left. It's never abated. I think that has to do with the fact that I fought to try to play music that I believed in. And even when I was a studio musician, uh, I worked on a lot of big famous records, right? But I also worked on, you know, dog food commercials. So, not everything was this glamorous working with Pink Floyd or Quincy Jones or Michael Jackson, or a lot of it was some pretty terrible music. But then I would I would concentrate on the craft of the guitar and the craft of trying to make that song from that particular artist, which maybe was terrible, but trying to make that song better or that artist sound better. And so I'd always try to find a way to find something positive about music, about the guitar, about what I was doing. And whether you love B.B. King and you're playing a few notes, or you're inspired by Alan Holdsworth and all the players that followed Alan, and you have this incredible technique and you're playing very technical fusion, complicated music, it really depends on what you love. And it's all good, long as you're making music. I think an audience, when you start playing for audiences, let's say you have the technique of Alan Holdsworth, and or beyond even, which some of them do today. And I know a few in LA that you've never heard of that, can play Alan Holdsworth better than Alan could, and God bless him. And so but when you're playing for the audience, and music is a two-way street. You have to get the feedback from the audience back to you, back to the audience, back to you. It's a constant feedback. If there's a wall between you and the audience, that audience is not going to come the next time to hear you play. So you don't have to dumb down your playing. You don't have to make it more simple, but you have to communicate. So and music is communication. Music is spirit. Music is love. Music is emotion. So, and you have to create that emotion with the audience, and the audience has to give it back to you, and you give it back to them, and it's this incredible thing that happens. So, they get younger and younger. Pretty soon there's a 7-year-old that has so much technique, you go, what? But, is that 7-year-old maybe going to grow up to be the next John Coltrane? Could be, or are they going to be looking for some other kind of work because they never learned how to create that spirit to make music with the audience? So just keep that in mind. It is a community of making music. So anyway, so one last thing I want to mention: time. When we were talking about young players having incredible technique, and young players coming up with all this information that you're learning and everything. But sometimes what gives it away that they're not quite there yet is the phrasing and the time, So it's very important to be very aware of your time. You can have all the greatest ideas. You can have, you can be playing all this amazing stuff on the guitar. You can have this amazing technique. But if you don't have good time, that's the most important thing, especially when you're playing with a band. So, it's very important to play with real musicians. And why do you sometimes like a certain player over another player? It's because of the feel, the way they phrase, the way their time is. So, practicing with a metronome, practicing with a band, and checking out, when you're checking out other guitar players or other musicians that you like, why do you like that saxophone player? Why do you like the way Michael Brecker plays or Stan Getz plays, or why do you like a certain guitar player? A lot of it has to do with their feel. And sometimes how do you learn feel? Well, you first of all, you got to be aware of it. If you're only learning technique and you're so involved in just the technique of playing the instrument, and you're not concerned about the phrasing and the feel and again, the communication with the audience. So just keep that in mind. That's almost like the biggest gift I could give you. The